The Chiefs made the choice they had to do, and they have two prime players for this fifth year. That's today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome in, friends and neighbors. Thanks for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make another Locked On show your next listen, because they're all going through the same process right now in adapting to their new players. I appreciate you, and thanks for joining me today. Chris is on vacation, so I'm going to break it down for you. The fifth-year options that were just laid on for both Trent McDuffie and George Karlaftis, we're going to go over it. What it means for the roster, the impact, that's coming up later in the show. Matt Derrick's actually going to do an extra appearance with me coming up next for his thoughts on it. And we'll start with what making that particular plunge does and what it means for right now for those two players. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting. You can find me over there. You may have seen my draft guide or the athletic matrix from rogueapc.com. I appreciate everybody who brought it this cycle, and thanks for supporting us outside of this show. You can also find me on NFL 33, where me and my team run down the league from a team building and front office point of view most of the time, and RGR Football. You can always find me there. We have a lot. If you would please like, sub, and hit the bell here, we're going to get into it. This is the decision I talked about in the spring, and it was not necessarily an extension, because an extension is not what they're doing here for these two guys, but it sets them up. This is the fifth-year options. And when you have two first-round draft choices like the Chiefs did in this particular year, you get to make two designations if you choose to. So the Chiefs have decided to designate the fifth-year options on both Trent McDuffie and George Karlaftis. A lot of people would debate back and forth whether that was necessary, whether that was going to happen. I theorized that it might, and it probably could, but that it absolutely should happen when we went over this the week after the Super Bowl, because we immediately shifted to, what are you going to do with this class with so many people in it? This is a very, very deep class. We'll talk about the ramifications for the rest of the roster later. But right here, it's a no-brainer. It's a very different case for Trent McDuffie than it is for George Karlaftis, and it's very different from the last time they were in a situation to try to extend their top cornerback. It didn't end up happening, but that's a different player for a different time, and this is a different situation. Having the fifth-year option on Trent McDuffie ensures two things. One, that you have him on what is still a cheap deal for that fifth year at 13.2. It should be very, very manageable amongst the cap there. The other thing is, you bought yourself the time to work on the extension, to add years and years and money to it. That is all because you have seen what you need to see. He is a leader. He is a rabid dog on this defense, and that's exactly what you need. He is a guy that is a top 10 corner in this league. I think you'll be interested to hear some of Matt's comments as well. You can't get away from that. And a lot of folks are going to be like, well, they put the fifth year on him. Does that mean that they're going to pursue the extension? It absolutely does. That is buying the time to work on the deal. Because if you were not going to extend him, I don't think that you'd really want to put the money into it. Most guys that don't get extended aren't going to get that fifth year either. That's the decision point that allows you out of that contract, or allows you to start over. And that's exactly what you would have to do if you weren't going to bring back Trent McDuffie. So this is a signal that he will be a Chief for a long time, as long as they can work it out. Now, could it lead to a franchise year after that if they can't reach an agreement? That is a possibility. But it is very clear that they value what he does. And unlike L'Jarius Sneed, who, when it was time for him to extend, they were in a conundrum, mostly because of injuries. And I think it's played out that that is the case that they should have been worried about, because he went to Tennessee and he didn't play a whole lot. I think it was 7 ball games that he was in. They cannot afford to do that with Trent McDuffie. But McDuffie has had none of the injury concerns. He's played through the season. He's played well. He's starting to make plays on the ball. And I think what you saw in the draft is leading into what they're looking for here is ball skills in the secondary, and Trent McDuffie starting to show more of it. Not only is he a great cover a great blitzer. Now, if he can take the ball away, that changes everything. So the 5th year should lead to an extension. Now, for George Karlaftis, it's the same thing, but on a different scale. It also allows you that easy money. Well, not easy. 15 million plus is still significant, but it's locked in. You're not negotiating that. And for George, I think it allows them to decide whether they feel the defensive front can go on with him leading it when Chris Jones' time to retire comes. Chris Jones is getting up there. Now he's got a few years left, but if you extend George Karlaftis, that means you think he can be the central character on that defensive front of the future. And that's what this season, as well as the 5th year option, allow them to explore, to see what his performance is like, how he grows into more of a role where he's got to dominate in key conditions, situations, and has to be the guy that stirs the drink rather than Chris stirring it to him. That's the difference. And I think the acquisitions they made along the defensive front in this draft will help that. And it will allow them, if you have 4 true pass rushers on the field, whether it's Charles Omenihu, Ashton Gillotte, I do think is going to play a role. And Omar Norman-Lott certainly will be the other defensive tackle on the field in pass rush situations. That should be null and void, no issues, no thoughts. That's what it should be. And if that happens, then it allows George Karlaftis to have one-on-ones to beat tight ends and running backs and have maybe a career year now and maybe another before that extension. That is a decision worth making. Now, I'm not the only one who has thoughts on this. Matt Derrick is going to be up next as we explore what these things do inside the room and what his thoughts are on these 2 5th-year extensions. We'll do that coming up next. There's nothing like the atmosphere of the NBA playoffs. Every bucket, defensive stop, and moment feels huge. It's electric in those arenas. And with Game Time, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. I use it all over the place for every sports, every event I can get there, I do. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets last minute or not with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, all you got to do is create an account, redeem our code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. It's last minute tickets, it's lowest prices, and it's guaranteed. Because I can't get enough, and you guys need to know Matt Derrick is back with us for a second day in a row, just for a little bit, because, Matt, the Chiefs made the decision that I talked about post-Super Bowl, that both George Karlaftis and Trent McDuffie were deserving of the 5th-year option to see what the future would hold. They have decided to exercise those options. Surprised, not? What's your reaction to it?
No, these were easy, no-brainer decisions. I mean, particularly with McDuffie. He's the 5th-year option for him is $13.6 million. That's below market rate for Trent McDuffie. And I mean, and that's the thing is that, you know, hey, had he been named to 2 all Pro Bowl teams instead of 2 all pro teams, he'd be making, I think, $7 million more this year. So, you know, that's a bargain for Trent McDuffie. And it's also leverage because he's not going to be making, you know, a lot of money in 2026. So, you know, that puts off a year that he can be hitting free agency. So if Trent McDuffie wants to make a lot more money, the faster he can, the only way he's going to do it is through an extension with the Chiefs. And they can obviously pay him more money now for 2026. And so with an extension and give him his money earlier, I mean, it's great leverage if you're the Chiefs just towards making a deal. It's not necessarily about saving money. But like I said, I mean, I think it makes it easier now for you to be able to get the 5th-year option does with McDuffie because he's going to be playing below market rate. And you don't want to be doing that waiting for free agency. He likes Kansas City. Kansas City likes him. He's a great fit. So I there's no doubt that this should be not only an easy decision to make, but it should make things easier as far as an extension. And with George Karlaftis, he actually, even though he was picked later, but because of, once again, the vagaries of the positions in the NFL draft and the CBA, he's going to make more money than McDuffie will in 2026. He's going to make almost $15.2 million. I think he Spotrac, his average annual value was pegged at like $20 million. So again, a little below market, but And I get every sense that the Chiefs would also try to get a long-term deal done with him as well. The focus in the short term is going to be on getting Trey Smith. And then you move on to McDuffie and to Karlaftis.
Well, and I think that's exactly where I was going to. This buys you time to work on the Trey Smith deal, where you know what these next two salaries are going to be for these two players. I agree. The earlier you can get McDuffie in particular done, the better, because I do think that he is still on a track, a bit of a steeper incline to his career than George is, who I do think is still on an incline, just not quite as drastic. And so every day that goes by is more money that you're going to have to spend on both these guys. So I like that. But getting Trey done is now the key, is it not, to being able to move forward with both those contracts?
Yeah, that's the next step. And especially because if you're keeping Trey, the longer you do on that contract tender for the franchise player, it really prohibits you from being able to get anything done with those two guys, because you don't really have any room to add any money to them this year. I mean, a lot of the negotiations probably wouldn't add a whole lot to this year's deal. It could add some. I mean, especially if there's a signing bonus of any sort, it could absolutely impact a little bit of this year's cap. There could be some money thrown into it. So, yeah, if you're the Chiefs, you do really need to get Trey done just to be able to make room for the other extensions. But also, again, it comes back to budgeting your money for the next 5 years. You need to know how much money you're going to be paying Trey Smith and when. So then you can then structure Trent McDuffie's deal and George Karlaftis' deal to fit in with all of your other contracts. So, how much you're paying Trey matters a little bit. It's when you're paying Trey that money that matters even more. And then how you kind of build it around all the other jigsaw pieces in the salary cap puzzle that Brett Veach and Chris Shea and Jack Wolof have to figure out.
Well, and that's a pretty complex puzzle, because we're talking about players like Jaylen Watson. We're talking about Brian Cook. We're talking about Leo Chenal. A lot of guys that I think have performed to the level that you want to try to keep them if you can. But that piggy bank doesn't have a whole lot of room in it right now. So does this preclude them from really working on those, because you don't have extensions, you don't have fifth-year options on anyone outside the first round? Who becomes the priority after that to you?
Yeah, I mean, well, with the Chiefs, let's be real. I mean, Brett Veach, typically, unless it's a player that, they're banking on, that they feel like is a no-brainer, their focus is usually, let's wait as long as we can to get something done. I mean, now, would they have loved to have gotten something with Trey and to a lesser extent, Nick Bolton? I mean, Nick Bolton was a little bit different because of the injury. So I think that both sides were probably fine with waiting a little bit there. But, how much of last year's focus really was, a lot of it was trying to get Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith done, looking ahead towards, the free agent class. Next year, I mean, how much of it is looking towards that group? How many of those guys do you want to lock up long term? I mean, there's a lot of good players there, but at the same time, when it comes to a Jaylen Watson and Nazeeh Johnson and Joshua Williams, you've just signed Christian Fulton and you've drafted Noel Williams. So you're not going to be bringing back all three of those guys. So there's not necessarily going to be an impetus on bringing them all back. Is there more on Brian Cook? Because if he, but again, coming off the injury and a kind of maybe a down year for Brian Cook last year, do you wait? Who in that class is really the standout player that you're saying to yourself, okay, no, we got to get that done. You've tied up two of them with the franchise tag. So then it's really, who's beyond that? Because let's even face it. I mean, throw Isaiah Pacheco in there. You probably just drafted his replacement. So you're probably not talking about Isaiah Pacheco in a long-term deal.
It changes things, certainly. Of the two fifth-year options now, I have to think the priority has to be Trent McDuffie. It doesn't necessarily have to be one in front of the other. But just because you're the priority doesn't mean you're the first one to get done. In your gut, who gets a deal first between Karlaftis and McDuffie?
I think it's going to be McDuffie, because I think that the Chiefs are willing and able and will feel a safety in giving him a top of the market deal. It's, hey, if George Karlaftis and Trent McDuffie both want top of the market deals, which ones have earned it to this point? You would say Trent McDuffie, because he's performed. He's been one of the best corners in the league. And maybe the only reason he hasn't been all pro 2 or 3 years is because there's Sauce Gardner and Derek Stingley and Patrick Surtain. I mean, those are, and JC Horn. There's your 5 best corners in the league, in my opinion. And you know what? You might be the 5th best. You're still one of the best corners in the league. And yet at the same time, McDuffie's got the hardware to prove it. Karlaftis hasn't been that. There's no way you would say that George Karlaftis is one of the 5 best edge rushers in the league. So if he wants to be paid top of the market, I mean, he hasn't proven it yet. So, that's why I think it's easier for McDuffie, because I think his value is more obvious to everybody on both sides of the negotiation. On the Karlaftis side, I would imagine there's going to be some distance as far as what his value is. That's why this year is contract year, all intents and purposes for Karlaftis. I mean, 26 would be a contract year for the rest of the league. But this is one for the Chiefs, because this is, I think, the year that will determine whether or not they're willing to pay him top of the market, whether he would be a guy that you would consider trading, because you can't have everything. You can't pay everybody, but then again, would he bring back value? I don't know what a team would give. Would a team give you a 1st-round pick for George Karlaftis right now? I don't know about that.
Yeah, that's a fair question. We're going to have to find out, and he's going to have to play through that. Who will help affect that decision? That's coming up next. But Matt, thank you for your insight. We appreciate it.
As always, my friend, take care.
Did you know Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into a gaming and entertainment hub with Fire Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to go. Dive into hundreds of premium titles, including EA Sports College Football 25 and Call of Duty, as easily as you stream your favorite shows. Call of Duty is one of the ones that I play whenever I get time, especially in the off season. You can jump into it as easily as just turning it on and getting your control. No console. It makes a huge difference. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller are required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, the 2nd gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd gen. Thanks to Matt for making an extra appearance this week. I really do appreciate it. When I'm flying solo, let me know what you guys think. You like seeing Matt more? You like the solo shows, whether it's Chris doing them or me doing them? What are you looking for? Put your comments down below, because I'd like to have the feedback. Now, what does it mean for the rest of the roster that Karlaftis and McDuffie will be on the 5th years? What it does in the secondary, I think, is puts everybody else on notice. Trent's not going anywhere. The money's going to go up for him. And again, as we've talked about with Chris Jones, with Travis Kelce, obviously with Mahomes, when your stars start making more money, the contracts around them have to fall overall as a position group or a side of the ball, whatever you want to look at it as. And so for guys that are in the same class, they have to start feeling that pressure of they have to make their move to be one of the ones that stays, whether it's Joshua Williams or Najee Johnson, who is back on a small deal, or Jaylen Watson. With acquisitions in this draft of Noel Williams, we've talked about him, and we'll talk about him more tomorrow as well. That puts pressure on making this roster, not this season, but next. And that's going to be the key. So it raises the level of play, and hopefully in a good way, because a lot of players are going to feel that pressure, but for a positive change. And that's what we're looking for. It also means that everybody's got to start pitching in on the defensive front. And George has to take his game up a level as well. He knows he has this payday coming on the 5th year, but to get extended, it's got to raise the level of the game. Having more defensive pass rushers on this line will help him, but that's not it. He's got to actually take that on. We know training with Bobby Stroup helps. We know continuing to work outside of the team system to improve pass rush skills helps. That's actually where he met Ashton Gillott, as I understand, and they have trained together. So that also makes, hopefully, that synergy together. And Gillotti coming into this defense should help, whether it's as a sub, or what I really hope is that with Norman Lott and Chris Jones on the inside, George Karlaftis and Charles Omenihu on the outside, Gillotti can come in and be a 5th rusher that you can stand up, you can put him anywhere. He can rush B gaps. He can rush A gaps if he really has to. He can certainly come off the edge. You can make it so this is a terrifying front for the NFL, much like you've seen Spags in years past in New York, etc. It also means that all those guys have a little bit less of doubles coming their way, and that's going to be key, particularly for George Karlaftis. So it means that we need to start to see both of those guys perform a little bit better. The expectation for Trent McDuffie will go up, but so will it for George Karlaftis. And it means that working within the system is not enough. Working to be at the top of the system, to be the next guy, to be the number 2 to Chris Jones is now the role for George Karlaftis. I think he can live up to it. He has actually grown into a better pass rusher than I had originally thought that he would coming out of the draft. He still has upside, I believe. And if he can do a few more things in terms of his handwork, I think that will take off some of the explosiveness that we're looking for and be able to balance him out and be more productive. In the end, it's about pressure production. Sacks are nice, but it's about pressure production and what you can do for this defense. I think George has that running away. Let's see what he does with his game. Now, the other thing that it does is it does put more planning pressure on Brett Veach and his entire staff. Because, again, big leaps in the salary cap, and Chris will have to address this next week about what that may actually look like, does give you a little bit more room, but you can't start giving away giant contracts. You have to be able to manage that, not just this season or what this 5th year salary will be for these guys, but what the extensions look like and how they stack out. Because right now they're in a situation with Trey Smith where they have to get that sorted out. This allows them to put both these excellent players on a path. We're going to have them for the 5th year. Now we got to get back to Trey. We got to work out a long-term deal with Trey to be our right guard. And if he does that, then that lowers the salary. You can fit that into the puzzle a little bit easier with the extensions for both McDuffie and Karlaftis against Trey, and maybe against Leo Chenal, who I think should not be a question, should be extended at earliest convenience, again, to keep the cost down. The acquisition of Bassa is nice, but it's backup. Leo Chenal is a difference maker. We've seen that over and over and over, and that has to be taken care of as well. Those two things with Trey Smith, these 5th year extensions allow the Chenal talk to begin. And I think that really is what we're looking for. I don't think they can ask anything more of a player in this defense, particularly at the linebacker level, to come in and make plays, because he does it consistently all the time. And that's what we're looking for everybody in this role. Now, what it doesn't do is mean that they are out of the acquisition business. Fulton came in the offseason. Still haven't seen him on the field. We don't know what that's going to be. There's more to having a corner core, meaning 5 and 6 deep, than there is just getting an experienced hand in there. It's got to be a mesh point. It's got to come together as a group. So what it doesn't mean is that they're done at either position. More pass rushers are possibilities. Certainly a veteran that can play on 1st down and 3rd down at the defensive tackle spot is something they need to look for in cut downs here, not only this spring for cap casualties, but in camp as rosters are cut down to the 53, the Chiefs need to be looking for that. Same thing. They have a lot of developmental talent on free agent contracts, on developmental contracts, likely practice squad players, Darius Rush, a number of players. They still have to look for better and upgraded players at the corner position, even though they're intending to sign Trent McDuffie. This is all bits and pieces of the puzzle, and this is how you stay at the top like the Chiefs have for the last 5 seasons straight. They need to do it again. Tall order for Brett Veach, but this is, I think, an easy decision in order to make that happen. Both the 5th years on George Karlaftis and Trent McDuffie get you farther down the road and let you plan that out with a chance to be more effective. That's how I see it. How do you see it? Leave your comments down below. I would actually really like to know. So please bear with me. Tomorrow's going to be fun. We're just going to talk about the new acquisitions, how they can fit in, what I want to see them do in order to fit in, and what those timelines might be. And then Chris will be back Monday. We'll get you our normal shows as we start to go through back and forth and start having arguments about where and when we need to see things. And OTAs are coming, so don't mind that. If you would like and sub and hit that bell for us right now, I would appreciate it, because it'll keep you involved all off season as we get ready for activities, followed by more, then the break, and then training camp. And yes, I am talking training camp already. It is April 29, and we are ready to go. So thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful afternoon, evening, or whenever you're listening to this. If you're at work, keep it grinding, and thanks for making us part of your life. We appreciate you, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.